It is quite rightly a Tottenham loving.
Yeah, absolutely.
Isn't it?
Well deserved.
Welcome to the Tottenham loving.
Ange Postecoglou did what I love to see people do, which is they say they're going to do something and they went and did it. There's no way Levy would have said to Ange Postecoglou, we've had winners before and now we got you. What we saw yesterday, you can only bounce when you hit the bottom. I think we just saw Man United hit the bottom. They were poor because they are poor and they've been poor for a period of time. And Man United, as they are, have brought this upon themselves. You embolden these little runts to think they've got a sense of entitlement to say these things. Pack it in. It's nonsense, you little weakling.
It is quite rightly a Tottenham loving.
Yeah, absolutely.
Isn't it?
Well deserved.
Welcome to the Tottenham loving.
Yeah.
No, in all honesty, this morning. Good morning, everybody. Good morning, Simon.
Morning.
We will be asking a whole bunch of questions this morning off the back of Tottenham's 1-0 win in that final last night. You probably all get your own views of what you watched.
Yep.
I know I have. I know you have, Simon.
Yep.
In your eyes, what did you watch last night, mate?
I watched a game where two sides weren't particularly that entertaining, but I watched a game where the result was more prevalent than the performance, and Tottenham got the job done. They showed a different side to their character that they've shown during the course of this Europa League, which is that they can play a different way, which has always been the question about Ange. He even said himself that he sets up the competitions differently. He plays a different way in cup competitions, so he's proven that point. What we all take away from that is that I think it's very little debate that Ange decided to sacrifice the domestic season in favour of winning the Europa League. Now, whether that's exactly what he did or a proportion of what he did, I think it's self-evident that ultimately to finish 17th or 16th, 17th in the Premier League, yet win the second biggest competition in domestic European football, there has to be some reason why there's such a juxtapose as to the performances. I mean, it wasn't a great game.
No, it wasn't.
Everyone knows it wasn't a great game.
I mean, we truly witnessed 16th versus 17th.
Sure. And 16th versus 17th dominating a European competition. So I don't know what that says. I mean, we should actually take some sort of validity from that to say how powerful our domestic league is, that we can have two teams that finish 16th and 17th that win the second competition in European football. So there's a testament to the strength of our domestic league against the strength of other domestic leagues around Europe. You know, I was pleased for Ange Postecoglou. You know, but I wanted to kick the television screen in when TNT. I was looking for the moment when Ange was going to interact with Daniel Levy, and they flicked away to the players celebrating, and then all the people were going up onto the plinth.
Yeah.
You see Daniel there, you saw Jim Ratcliffe there, you saw the UEFA Confederation, and there was a moment where I was looking to see the interaction between Postecoglou and Daniel Levy. You can read a lot between it, and they cut away.
We never saw it,
and I thought, oh God, that's a piece of stuff that we should be seeing.
Yeah.
But I thought it was a great set of interviews. I thought Rio Ferdinand did really well. I mean, I know Glenn Hoddle was saying, easy, fella, he's just won a competition. But Rio was ballsy. He was asking questions of Ange Postecoglou that were loaded with, rather than just, well done, mate, congratulations, backslapping Bonhomie, it was actually, here's some real questions for you to field.
Absolutely.
And I thought he did really well, Rio.
We all remember, Simon, last year, what Ange Postecoglou said, and then everybody, quite rightly, held him to it.
You said at the start of the season, the first campaign really about setting principles, getting your message across. The second campaign, you normally win. Are you seeing enough in this side that this season you do think that they will be a side that can win? I'm talking silverware.
Yeah, absolutely.
Competing right at the top.
Am I going to answer the question, or are you going to keep asking it? No, absolutely. And I think I'll correct myself. I don't usually win things. I always win things in my second year. Nothing's changed.
And you're confident you can do that with this side? You're seeing enough?
Well, I just sort of said it now, so I don't say things unless I believe them.
So he believed it then, and he probably still believes it now. After all the criticism, Simon, 21 league defeats and all the media battles that he's had, the toing and froing, is this one of football's great comeback stories?
Well, has the criticism... I mean, look, the criticism that was levied at him that he had to deal with in the press conference yesterday about zero to hero to clown, right? Then you're stepping above lines, right? And across lines. But the criticism over the season, I don't think it's been criticism. I think there's been fair observations. You can't have a team that's finishing 17th in the Premier League, that's losing game after game after game against crap teams in the league at the time, like Ipswich, like Leicester, like a very poor Crystal Palace at the beginning of the season, and not expect to have some observations made of what you're doing, right? So the fact that he said it, the fact that he meant it, and he said it in conjunction with being, I thought, a little bit testy with the journalist that really wasn't making a big deal of a question. She was just asking a question, and Ange decided to be short and terse with her and double down on the fact that he always wins a trophy. Well, it was stacked for him to have that opportunity, because at the beginning of this competition, let's not lose the reality of the fact that Tottenham were tipped as the favourites to win this competition. So they fulfilled what the bookies normally do, which is get it right. So they fulfilled that outcome at the same time as the competition was loaded with changes that had not been there before, which is no drop down from the Champions League, Champions League sides dropping in.
Sure.
So all of those things conspired, and then arguably, without wanting to take a single thing away from Ange Postecoglou, Daniel Levy, or any of the Tottenham fans, you couldn't have picked an opponent better than Man United, because Man United yesterday, with due respect to the outcome, were abject.
Yeah.
So with all those things, I'm thrilled for Tottenham. I'm genuinely thrilled for Tottenham.
Yeah.
I've got lots of Tottenham fans. As you know, I've got a great deal of personal affection for Daniel Levy. I'm thrilled for Daniel for it. But when we're distilling it and take away the emotion and take away all the swaths of sentimentality, they conspire to produce an outcome. But notwithstanding that, Ange Postecoglou did what I love to see people do, which is they say they're going to do something and they went and did it.
So what should it mean now for Ange? I mean, should this represent a farewell gift, or is it the catalyst for another chance?
Well, look, the problem for Daniel is two-tiered. There are still as many questions about Ange Postecoglou as there has been answers provided. He has got the monkey off people's backs, which is a trophy. He has exhibited something that maybe he'll now pivot into, which is I can play a different way when I have to, when I need to, when there's a real pressure on me to achieve an outcome. I will change the way this Tottenham side plays. I'll be more mature in my approach. I'll allow my players to be able to defend properly rather than suffer the consequences of a one-way set of thinking. So if that's the blueprint to go forward on, it might give people more of a reason to move away from the argument which I myself advanced, which is even if he wins that trophy, it still brings out the question, is he going to be the right fit for the longer term? Because the longer term starts now.
Right.
You enjoy the moment, but
right.
Now you've got to build instantaneously for the next set of transfers that you're going to spend, the next set of opportunities next year. You're going to come under the same pressures.
Yeah.
Can he be in a position where they don't find themselves, for different reasons, in a Ten Hag situation where they go with what they think is the right thing to do because a trophy's been won, and 3 months later, after spending hundreds of millions of pounds in a transfer window, they find themselves in the same situation that they were at the back end of last season?
When you look at it, the match itself, Spurs had 3 shots, just 27.7% possession, and they completed 115 passes. The lowest figures Opta has on record by any team in a major European final. But, so what? Tottenham won it. This was Ange post-match.
I think I said yesterday, I'm pretty kind of, not relaxed is not the word, because I'd be disappointed if we couldn't continue on this path. But, like I said, it's not a criticism. I understand why it would be difficult for a club like this to buy into one person's vision. I remember when I signed, it was kind of, the club, well, even Daniel sort of said, we went after winners, it didn't work, and now we've got Ange. And, mate, I'm a winner. I've been a serial winner my whole career. It's what I've done more than anything else, and I know people talk about my football, which I'm very proud of, and I know people dismiss my achievements because, they didn't happen to happen on this side of the world, but for me, they're all hard-earned, and all I've done my whole career is win things, and but I understand, look, obviously the way things have gone in the league, people are rightly to be concerned about. Like I said, I don't think that's a true reflection of where we're at. But whatever happens, I said my own sort of belief in what I do doesn't waver, and I'll continue to kind of push on to do what I do.
So if it came to it,
I'm going to give him some latitude for some of those observations because I think he's earned the right to have some latitude at the back of a win.
Go on.
Well, I would not suggest that Daniel Levy characterised the conversation where we've had winners before, now we're getting you, right? Because that's a ridiculous start of a premise of a relationship.
So is Ange talking nonsense?
Well,
there?
I think that's just a bit of a reaction to the circumstances in which he found himself. Most owners I can assure you, will buy into the vision of a manager if that manager has the capability of selling that vision. Right? So when you appoint a manager, you look at it, you know as an owner, and the more gnarled and experienced you are, that somewhere along the line your relationship is going to break down. But you don't start with that premise. You don't start with the half-empty glass. You start with a half-full glass. Hence the reasons why Ange has been backed. Whatever he may or may not say about the ramifications of certain reactions from the media, he cannot argue with the fact that there's been some money spent on transfers that he's wanted, right? So the vision that he talks about, that it's very difficult for people to buy into my vision. Well, Ange, with due respect, mate, it's difficult to buy into a vision at times when your team is getting beaten by other sides around you in the league that are poor, that are getting relegated, that are going to get relegated. So you don't have that luxury of suggesting that every single thing that comes out of your mouth is going to get a subscription from people working alongside you. But I can categorically tell you that any owner, there's no way Levy would have said to Ange Postecoglou, we've had winners before, and now we got you.
Right, I'm going to ask you two things as we hit the break. One you can be brief on. You've spoken to Daniel?
Exchange some text messages, yeah.
All right. Anything you want to share with us?
No, just I'm thrilled for him, and he's thrilled for himself.
Yeah, okay. But here's the one, and we'll come back to this the other side of the break. After achieving what Pochettino, Conte and Mourinho couldn't achieve, can Tottenham really sack Ange after that? And as we go to the break, yes or no?
Well, Mourinho was sacked before a League Cup final, so he didn't get an opportunity to win something.
So that's a yes.
Of course they can sack him. Of course, if they think... The big thing is, if you've got something better, and what better looks like, I don't know, but if you've got something better, then there's your reason. If you haven't, then you've got a trophy, you've seen a manager that can pivot, you've seen a manager that can change the way he plays to be able to overcome obstacles against better opposition. Maybe there's some lessons to be learnt for everybody here.
We're going to go to the calls in a second, and Manchester United fans lining up to speak to us this morning. We like it that way. But Simon, I'll return to you just before we do. Without Champions League football and the finances that it brings, how does the situation now change this summer for Manchester United? Does it change drastically? I mean, how much longer can this club trade off their name?
Well, for a while, I suspect, because the focus on Manchester United is still so significant, and so much about their deterioration almost operates at a higher level than people that actually win things. But we're seeing an erosion, and if it keeps on over another 10 years, you're going to see the analogy that I made of Manchester City being Red Bull and Man United being a Ferrari, being eroded because the next generation of fans alight upon winners, and Man United are not winners. So they've still got some juice in their tank. The idea that United are going to be in a situation where they can't change the direction of travel because they haven't got Champions League revenue is probably incorrect. They're going to have to be a little bit more adept in their trading and find their way through the Marcus Rashford, Jadon Sancho and whoever else, Anthony and whatever else they've got wrapped around them, which is of no benefit to them on the field, and find their way through that. But I think, realistically speaking, what we saw yesterday, you can only bounce when you hit the bottom. I've seen that in my life. I've seen it in businesses. I've seen it in other circumstances. I think we just saw Man United hit the bottom. You cannot make a case for Manchester United to be finishing 16th in the Premier League, two places above the relegation spot, and putting out a performance. Put aside the euphoria for Tottenham. Fantastic. Delighted for them. Man United were abject. And they've lost a final in such an abject manner with so much riding on it, so much opportunities to change the direction of travel, new manager, getting an opportunity to bag a trophy, the additional revenue, knowing that Man United need additional revenue to be able to compete with the perhaps challenges of PSR. None of that made a difference. They were poor because they are poor, and they've been poor for a period of time. And we don't see any change currently. But what I don't think is going to happen is I don't think you're going to see Man United not spending money in the summer. I don't think you're going to see Man United not trying to affect an outcome to give this manager his head, because they have to. The only challenge they've got really is, besides the idea that they might not have enough cash
it's
about
not get relegated.
Well, I don't think that's realistic. I don't think Man United will be relegated.
Really?
But I don't.
So this is as low as it goes?
I think so. I think you've just witnessed the Man United beast hit the bottom and the clank of the bottom, and then that's when you start to bounce, and I think you'll see a bounce. Now what that bounce looks like, it might mean that Man United finishes 10th next season and not 17th, but the point is that you will see a reaction from Man United both economically and on the field, I think.
Okay, well, that might buoy up many of the United fans, and I'm talking many of you coming to air this morning, or at least trying to, and we're delighted about that. So let me help facilitate that for you. Peter, big Manchester United fan, you've been waiting patiently, Peter. Good morning to you. Simon says this is your lowest point. Do you agree, Peter?
Good morning, gents. I think it's definitely, obviously, a lowest point, but I think, in my opinion, there's light in the end of the tunnel. And I'd just like a minute or so just to explain my reasons for that. Firstly, if you have a look at the data from yesterday, Spurs had the big effort, which I think was obviously fumbled in, and they take a 1-0 lead. If you have a look at the stats, there were 16 shots for United, 3 for Spurs. If Man United turned up and you didn't have the Man United name, so imagine they played the game unbranded in white shirts, and it was Bournemouth playing or Brighton, they would have said the whole narrative would have been Spurs have smashed and grabbed and taken the win home. It's because it's Man United, the whole media, our own fan base have piled it in, and the expectations are so high. Because it's Man United, I think the narrative goes massively against us. You had 4 chances there. Ahmad's one where he fired it across the goal. You had Rasmus off the line. You had Bruno's header at the edge of the box when he came running in. And in the last couple of minutes, you had Luke Shaw.
Yeah, but Peter, wait a minute, mate. Are you trying to tell us that the performance was almost acceptable?
No, I think it's acceptable to the degree that you have to, in my opinion, you have to say that, okay, Amrin's got what he's got in front of him. Whatever players are, then firstly, they're not his players. I think that he's got his system. He's not going to change from that system. It is what it is, and you have to honestly think: could you get anything more than what you've got out of him? Whilst I'm not saying it's acceptable as a Man United fan, I expect it should be a lot higher than that. But in the current situation, I don't think, even if Klopp was the manager yesterday, Inzaghi, Ancelotti, I personally don't think you would have got much more than what Amrin done yesterday.
Okay, Peter, listen, thanks for the call and thanks for the many points you've made. Peter, they're trying to see the positives. Kenny, big United fan, you trying to do the same? Where are you this morning? Good morning.
Good morning, guys. I'm enjoying the show. Peter, I don't know what Peter was watching last night. Simon was absolutely correct, 100%. We're rock bottom. United are a basket case. Last night's been 10 years of cretinous mismanagement in the making. The recruitment's, it's been abysmal. Millions upon millions of pounds wasted. Can I ask you guys a question? Who out of our current squad would any of the top European clubs buy off us? The answer's none of them. They're average at best. They're collectively average at best. There's no positives to take from last night or for this season whatsoever. I was thinking earlier, you know what I would think I would do? I'd buy that whole squad a small mirror and say, have a look in it. Who's staring back at you? The most talentless, overpaid, underachieving losers who have ever wore that red shirt.
So this is an all-time low, is it, Kenny? This is an all-time low.
Exactly. I can remember United getting relegated, but that team was ageing with Best and Charlton and that, but they had won a European Cup. These guys are exempt from any criticism. But this crowd, last night was a microcosm of the whole season. They were lethargic, no part in the play, no desire, no direction. Absolutely clueless.
And Kenny, Amorim is calling for faith from those at the top of the club. Do you have faith in him?
I think it's harsh to judge him. What I would say, he has to get away from this 3-4-3 unless he overhauls the squad. Because this squad can't play 3-4-3. I mean, they brought in players like Matthias de Ligt, and remember, we were like a Real Madrid care home for a while. Rafael Varane and Casemiro, they could hardly make it up the stairs. Rafael Varane couldn't string 3 games together.
I know the feeling there, Kenny.
Why are we buying players that Real Madrid, Barcelona or Bayern Munich either want rid of or they wouldn't buy?
Kenny, let's dwell on that. And thank you for the call, mate. Before we hit the break, Andy, you've been waiting patiently, big United fan. Is this the all-time low, Andy?
Honestly, this was like the lowest I've ever been as a football fan in my life. I was sat there and my wife just couldn't believe what she was watching me twist and turn on my couch. It's disgusting and unacceptable. And I know you say, look, can we look for the positives? I think the only thing we can look for is to use the no European competition, that we can strip this squad back, strip it back to the bare bones, get rid of the prima donnas, the Garnachos, get them out the door, get some money in, bring in some young players like Liam Delap, not go for the Jokeres and stuff like that, the big glamour signings, and just try and rebuild. Do what Arsenal done. I know they haven't won anything yet, but they started to rebuild, and there's a team there, there's an ethos, there's a passion in the squad. We've got none of that, none of it at all.
Okay, Andy, listen, thanks for the call, thanks for the points you have made. Simon, how did you get a hold of this football club, both on and off the pitch at the moment? I mean, on the pitch, so many questions to be asked, are there not? Luke Shaw, who started the game for United last night, having had a long layoff through injury, he put one or two interesting pointers our way when he spoke post-match.
We're all gutted. It's not how we saw the outcome, to be honest. But not just tonight. This whole season, it's been nowhere near good enough. And I think all of us have to question ourselves: are we good enough to be here? Because for a team like Manchester, for the season we've had, it's not acceptable. We know that. We all know that. I know that. It's not where Manchester should be.
My God, it's a long time since I've heard a player speak like that, with the stuffing having been well and truly knocked out of him so much.
Yeah, I mean, he gets a bit of a pass, doesn't he? Because he's been unfit all season, so he can speak to that without actually putting himself in the conversation, because everyone will instantaneously exclude him from it because he's not been fit enough.
Yeah.
But he makes the point. I mean, you look out on that field and you look at Manchester United, and for whatever reason, whether it's because the manager set them up in a certain way or because there's a complete and utter lack of talent out on the field, they're a mile off what Man United should be and could be. And they're a mile off what they've spent on these players. I mean, you look at the economics, and it's like the old expression, everyone knows the value of something, but when it comes down to the price of it, you've got to determine things differently. Or the other way around. Everyone knows the price of something, but it's the value of something that you should be looking forward towards.
Yeah.
You look at that, you look at all those players, you look at Højlund and you look at Mason Mount, and you look at other players. Casemiro's legs have gone. I mean, the observation that Graham Souness made 2 or 3 years ago about being a steady Eddie becomes more and more prevalent every time you watch him play. I mean, you look at the side, you look at the fact that Maguire is being put forward as a makeshift centre forward at the end to try and get something out of a game where they've been abject. And I know we had Man United callers coming in saying they had 4 chances at times.
Yeah.
And that was more to do with the nervousness that Tottenham exhibited rather than the brilliant, fluid play of Manchester United, and the fact that their goalkeeper at times, I'd have to say, I thought Tottenham's goalkeeper was a bloody liability at times.
Yeah.
He really was.
Yeah.
But they have to get hold of their recruitment policy. They have to get hold of their structuring and their thought processes.
Do they have to get hold of players, Simon, when they go on social media? Reacting to his exclusion and United's defeat, Garnacho's brother and his agent, Roberto, took to social media, working as no one else, helping every round, coming from 2 goals in the last 2 finals, just to be in the pitch for 19 minutes and gets thrown under the bus. Wowee. And then hours before the final, Garnacho himself posted a picture of him scoring in their FA Cup final win over City last season. And after the game, he told Argentinian TV, "I played every round to help the team reach the final. And today, I only get 20 minutes. Don't know. I'll try to enjoy the summer, and then we'll see what happens."
Well, this is what happens.
They've got to pull the brakes on that, haven't they?
Yeah, but this is what happens when you've got a culture inside a football club and outcomes on the field, and a manager that talks the way he does at times. You embolden these little runts to think they've got a sense of entitlement to say these things. The agent is an irrelevance, irrespective of whether he's his brother or not. And Man United, as they are, have brought this upon themselves. We've seen this player before. We've seen this player, and people give platitudes in defence of him. The captain saying that the reasons why he didn't celebrate a goal against Everton was because he doesn't feel that people have been supportive of him. Pack it in. It's nonsense, you little weakling. Get on with being a performance every week, and maybe the argument won't be about whether you're playing or not. And this is the club that you've created, United. Now, this is the club that you've got to get hold of. This is what your manager's got to get hold of, and get hold of this dressing room, get hold of these group of players, and start to get them to operate at a level that's vaguely resembling what Manchester United once were before. And this is the culture that you've allowed to generate. And there you are. So you reap what you sow.
The great and the good were in Bilbao last night for the Europa League final. A final that Tottenham Hotspur won by a single goal to nil. Manchester United have flown back to Manchester. Tottenham have flown back to North London. But a number of people are still left out in Bilbao. One of them is our man. It is with great pleasure that we join up with talkSPORT's chief football correspondent, Alex Crook. Alex, good morning. The morning after the night before, how do you look back in it?
Yeah, good morning. It is very much the morning after the night before here. There are still quite a lot of football fans from both clubs trying to make their way home. That's been a bit of a nightmare logistically this morning in terms of getting from the centre of Bilbao to the airport. There just simply aren't enough taxis or buses to transport all the thousands of Tottenham and Manchester United fans who are making their way home, obviously with very different emotions. Tottenham having seen their team end their long trophy drought, Manchester United having seen their team end what's been a very miserable season, maybe you might argue in fitting fashion. But I've got to say, I got back to our apartment in Bilbao around about 2 o'clock this morning, having spoken to a couple of Spurs players in the mix zone after the game. They were obviously beaming with delight. There were Manchester United fans on the streets of Bilbao outside my apartment still singing Ruben Amorim's name. Tell you what, he's lucky they're a very patient fan base after last night.
We'll get to United in a second, Alex. On Ange Postecoglou, I put it to Simon a moment ago. After he's done what he said he would do, I always win a trophy in my second year, my second season. Should this represent a farewell gift or the catalyst for another chance? How do you see that?
Well, he certainly sees it as a catalyst for change. He thinks this can just be the first step on what might become a glorious new adventure for Tottenham. Having said that, there were just some things that he was saying in the press conference afterwards. He had that winner's medal draped around his neck that gave the indication that he knew it was far from a guarantee that he'll still be Tottenham manager at the start of next season. He said he hasn't had those discussions yet with Daniel Levy, doesn't plan to have them imminently. He's going to take part in the trophy parade on Friday night, which I'm sure will be packed to the rafters in the streets of that part of North London. Then they've got a final Premier League game at home to Brighton. That's going to be a carnival occasion. And then he's going off on holiday on Monday, and he ended his press conference, literally the last words he said before leaving the room, que sera, sera. So whatever will be in the mind of Ange Postecoglou. Personally, the noises that I was hearing leading into this final, I still think Tottenham will change manager.
If you listen to the way Ange spoke, and Alex, I don't know if you heard him doing the interview that he did with Rio Ferdinand when he came to the plinth on TNT, and he talked about Tottenham as they can do this and they can go on from this and they can do it. And I picked up on it. I thought, is that him not thinking about what he's saying, or are we listening to someone that knows there's a real challenge for the outcome for him? I don't know. I mean, look, the fact of the matter is, I think you wrote an interesting tweet yourself. You talked about two teams, one that proved it could change the way it played, and one that proved that it couldn't, and the outcomes were what they were. And I think there's a lot to be taken from that. I think Ange possibly, I mean, if he doesn't want to speak to Daniel Levy, if Daniel Levy wants to speak to Ange Postecoglou before he goes on holiday, Daniel Levy will be speaking to Ange Postecoglou, but I suspect he probably doesn't. He wants to settle into the groove of allowing the team to have won a competition and move from there. But I think I'm in the same camp as Alex. I wouldn't be surprised either way. If they've got a real viable name out there, because obviously the Champions League qualification, Alex, is a big thing. It opens up a whole raft of financial opportunities now as a result of being in that competition, because the scale is there. Spurs can go big on spending next year if they want to. So it opens up the pool of managers that might be available to Spurs. But I can't think of any names off the top of my head that imminently jump into the seat of Ange Postecoglou, and that will be part of the equation.
But surely, and I'll put this to both of you, before Postecoglou goes on holiday, as you're telling us he's going on Monday, Alex, is it? Surely he's going to have spoken.
Yeah, that's what he said.
Surely they will have had a conversation, and surely he will know if he's coming back from holiday to his job.
Well, you'd like to think that Daniel Levy has already made the decision, because we found ourselves in a situation this time a year ago with the beaten team last night, Manchester United, where they made an emotional decision after winning the FA Cup, albeit after sounding out various potential replacements, that they would stick with Erik ten Hag. Now, we were in Germany at the time when that news came through. Simon was adamant it was the wrong decision. Actually, you can't judge a manager on the basis of what they do in the cup competitions. It has to be about the league form. So on that basis, Simon, Daniel Levy might look at Manchester United and the mistakes they made, and that's why they've ended up in this situation where they've had their worst season in half a century, and think, do you know what, we're going to have to be braver here. If we don't believe that Ange Postecoglou is the right man, we shouldn't let sentiment get in the way.
But there's also a reason. I mean, I don't know what you think, Alex, but it's becoming clear, and obviously once the vision arrives, everyone becomes a visionary, don't they, that he has potentially sacrificed the domestic season in pursuit of the Europa League, because the manner in which he's played, not just against Man United in this final, but also against Eintracht Frankfurt, is a very different way than he decided to play in the Premier League. He himself has talked about it now and said that I set up differently for cup competitions. He's shown that he has a different way of playing, which means that he has more than one trick to his repertoire, which means then you've got something else to look at as an owner. You've got something else to consider about the reality of it. But I think, in all honesty, if someone shows you what they are, believe them. And 17th in the league and a wonderful outcome in a tournament that was set up with Spurs as favourites to achieve this outcome to some extent isn't the blueprint for continued success.
Yeah, but here's the thing, I'll put this to both of you. Being 17th but with the Europa League is surely better than being 5th and no trophy.
It depends what you're building towards.
Come on, Simon. I mean, ultimately, they've won something.
Yeah, I think it's fabulous, and I think ultimately that everyone should bask in that particular glory. But unfortunately, when you're in the commercial side of the operation, and you have to think now about the bigger picture, not the immediate exaltation of what you've got, but okay, what happens next now? Where am I going next? I've got some more money to spend. I'm going to spend 150 million quid in the transfer window in August to be able to supplement this playing squad. Right? Who am I spending it with? Am I going to have another situation where potentially I have an early Champions League exit?
Yeah.
I have a terrible stinker of a domestic season again because this guy has shown me one thing. Can he show me something else?
I'm wondering, I think we've still got Alex at the other end of Bilbao. Before we hit 10:30, Alex, and we'll talk Manchester United on this show, obviously, further down the line. I'm keen to know, mate, you've been at so many big games and I've been at so many of them with you. I wasn't with you last night. How will you look back on that final in a few sentences?
Well, it wasn't a great game. Often finals aren't. I think Tottenham did what they needed to do. Simon's alluded to it already. They changed the way they play for these knockout rounds. They were much more pragmatic. They were happy not to have the ball. They were happy to sit deep, particularly after they scored. And Manchester United simply didn't have the quality or the game plan to break them down. I think Ruben Amorim made mistakes with his team selection. I don't think Bruno Fernandes should have been played so deep in midfield. I think Rasmus Højlund should have been hooked at half-time after a dreadful first half. I don't think Luke Shaw should have been out there at all because clearly he wasn't match fit. And there are big ramifications now. We talk about the finances involved. Great for Spurs. They're going to have that windfall. So Jim Ratcliffe has been telling anyone who listened over the last few months that United are in danger of running out of money. So how on earth are they going to fund this rebuild that they promised Ruben Amorim? And are they entirely convinced now, after the season they've had since Amorim came in, that he's the right man to take them forward? There's going to be a lot of soul-searching done today. I think this is the lowest ebb that Manchester United have been at, certainly in my lifetime, and probably, as I say, for the best part of half a century.
Alex, thank you very much indeed. I listened to a lot of you last night, mate. Great stuff, as always. So we'll put it out there this morning to Tottenham fans listening, and judging by the number of calls that are coming in already, you're going to be joining us in numbers this morning. Tottenham won it, and they've broken that trophy drought. But now that they've done that, surely Levy can't sack Ange, or can he? Can Tottenham possibly part company with Ange Postecoglou now? Andy's a big Tottenham fan who's through to Simon and myself. Andy, good morning. What would you like to say, mate?
Good morning. What I'd like to say is I've previously been Ange out, but what I don't think we're picking up is on one thing that he said during his TV interview last night was he saw what was happening with the injuries. He saw that we might finish sort of 4th, 5th in the table, and the decision he took was the one thing that needs to change at Tottenham is the winning mentality. And he said last night that it was absolutely imperative for this club that we win something and change the mentality of the club top to bottom. So I'm now Ange in. I'll give him a season to see if that really does make the change at Spurs. And he has proved in the Europa that we can change tactics and win games.
Is Andy right in your view with the way he's framed it there, to be Ange in, having been Ange out?
I mean, everyone's got their own way of looking at things. I mean, ultimately, if they'd lost the game last night, which they didn't, then there'd be a different set of discussions. I'm not sure it's as black and white as he worked out that the injuries would have prohibited him from finishing 4th or 5th and subsequently was happier finishing 17th and winning the Europa League. I think he set his stall out and knowing that the Europa League was something he could win. I certainly don't think he wanted to finish 17th. I certainly don't think he expected to finish 17th, and I certainly don't think some of the things he said during the course of the season stand up to the sniff test. But where we are now is we're in a situation where, I mean, I don't believe that, speaking to a lot of Tottenham fans, and also knowing the owner, that they don't want to win things, that they don't believe they can win. I think there's silly conversations that go on that are reductive about Tottenham fans cheering on or being prepared to lose that Arsenal don't win the league and things like that. I think that's a small section of the Tottenham fan base.
Yes.
And then it gets amplified up to being Spursy. I think there is a desire to win. Whether there's the financial resources to compete with those that can actually win the Premier League, that's a different discussion.
Yeah.
And whether Ange Postecoglou can translate a cup competition into an opportunity to be successful in the domestic league remains to be seen. But what he has done is he's created an outcome which he can now trade on, which is, I now believe this is a winning mentality that's been installed. I've proven my points. I've proven that I can come into this football club and win something. I now believe it will be the catalyst. The question is, has he done enough? Is it right now, given all the questions that people asked of him that have only been answered to some extent by a performance against Man United in a poor Europa Cup final, is that enough? Is that enough to let him go again?
Yeah.
And that question can only be answered by one person, which is ultimately Daniel, isn't it?
I wonder what Chris, the Tottenham fans, think. Is it sufficient progress in your eyes, Chris, for Ange to carry on? Good morning.
Good morning, Jim. Good morning, Simon. Listen, it's easily the best show on talkSPORT, this, by far. So I want to put that out there. Also, massive congratulations to Southend United, who got into the playoff final yesterday. You've got to say that. Well, I think, if I'm being honest, look, for stars Ange, I think now he's won a trophy, he has earned the right to stay on till Christmas. Obviously, if we're tanking it in the league and fall from bottom again, maybe Levy should pull the trigger and sack him. But I think, Jamie, look, he's earned the right to stay on. I mean, you know, when he first came to the club, it came from the Scottish Premier League, which I thought was a very uncompetitive league in comparison to the Premier League. And I wasn't really enamoured by him when he first arrived. But listen, if a guy proves me wrong and also delivers on a promise, how many people could say they deliver on a promise? The politicians we elect haven't delivered on a promise. He has.
Fair enough. Did Ange and the players give you one of the greatest nights of your life last night, Chris?
Oh, definitely, absolutely. I mean, I went round a friend's house. There was 20 Spurs fans in Evan Work. We were in the back garden, and I'll tell you something, honestly, it was absolute bedlam at full time, honestly. It really, really was. And I think, you know, really, I'm pleased for Ange in a way, really, because all those smug, know-it-all journalists in the media that keep holding to this. And, I mean, he can now say, well, you know what, yeah, I've proved you right.
That's absolutely right. That's absolutely right.
Well said, Chris. Thank you for that. Don't know who you could be alluding to there. Simon, what is this? Is it, before we head to Jason, hold on for a minute, Jason. Is this vindication for Postecoglou or vindication for Daniel?
Well, Daniel won't get any vindication in the eyes of certain Tottenham fans because they'll.
Should he?
Of course he should, because they should all celebrate in the successes and they should all be consequential.
So will
the
the protests stop now?
I doubt it. If Tottenham don't start well next season, it'll be Daniel's fault again, and that's the reality of being an owner. What I will say about Postecoglou's starts, right, and whilst I love it, I love the fact that the same way that Mourinho said he was going to do something, he did it. Let me tell you what would have happened if he hadn't have done it. It would have been because of some other reason, which is the injuries, the lack of support that he got, the culture of the football club. So Ange can throw that comment out there and say, I always win something in my second season, mate. He wins it. He's absolutely validated, and everyone goes, wow, fantastic, you did what you said you're going to do. He doesn't win it. I'm willing to wager you that there would have been a whole raft of reasons that ultimately he couldn't achieve his prophecy. So as bold as we think it is, without being mean-spirited, I know that there would have been qualification behind the lack of success, but now he doesn't have to have that. Right. He's got the ultimate outcome, and I'm pleased for him. Yeah.
Jason, big Tottenham fan. Are you Ange in and always have been? Or are you Ange out and now Ange in? Where are you, Jason?
I'll answer that question in one sec, because first of all, I have to say a massive thank you to Ange and everyone at Tottenham for giving me and my family one of the greatest nights that I can remember, as particularly as a football fan. So thank you for that, because it was unbelievable, and we must be grateful for that, because it was absolutely incredible, and not many people thought we were going to win that last night. I've been Ange in for the vast majority of the season, and then I started doubting him when we lost to Everton and Leicester one game after each other. I just couldn't believe that we lost those two games. I'm going to now say something else about Daniel Levy, and I'm going to say to Daniel Levy, well done for learning from your previous mistakes, because Daniel Levy previously has sacked managers before big games. There's two managers that stick out that he sacked them before big games. I think George Graham got sacked before we were about to play Arsenal, and I think it was a semi-final. And we sacked, who was the other manager we sacked more recently? Mourinho. Yeah, of course, Mourinho before a massive game. So when you've got 50,000 people screaming, Levy out, Levy out, Levy out, the easiest thing to do for the chairman, which Simon will be able to obviously agree with this or disagree, the easiest thing to do is just change the manager, because then you're taking the pressure away, because you're saying, well, I'm trying to do something different. But he's ridden this wave, and he's literally kept the manager that the majority, I think, of Spurs fans wanted Ange to go, and said, you know what, he's taken us so far in this cup competition, I'm going to wait and see what happens. And he's actually done that. So well done. My concern now is that if Daniel's decided, and I think knowing Daniel as I do know Daniel, I'm in a bit of a privileged position. When Daniel took on Ange, I thought to myself he'd lost the plot. Genuinely, I just couldn't get my head around how we'd got rid of people like Mourinho and we've taken on Ange, I'd never heard of, if I'm being really honest with you. But in his first season, he's finished fifth, which this year that would have got us Champions League spots. So he finished fifth in his first season. His second season, he's won us a cup competition that's got us into the Champions League. Now, if you would have said this to me 2 years ago, I would have thought, yeah, I'll take that. I'll be happy with that. So now he's got a decision to make. Is either he backs him properly, because all this talk about we'll give him till Christmas, I'm not into that kind of talk, because either he's going to back him now during this summer and say you've got another 2 seasons with us to get this right, or get rid of him now. Don't be putting one foot in, one foot out.
Jason, let me. That's an interesting point you put. Where do you think Daniel would go with that, Simon?
Look,
I like the way Jason's framed it.
I mean, I think there is very little doubt, without being indiscreet, that if Tottenham weren't progressing through the Europa League this season, that Ange Postecoglou would have gone. Because I think there was very little case to make to defend him against the accusations of what his team were doing domestically. But the Europa League threw up opportunities to keep on giving Ange an opportunity to find a way out of the conundrums that he might be creating for the ownership by putting out such a poor performance in the domestic league. We must remember that this Europa League has been an opportunity. There haven't been that many great teams in it. You know, besides their performances in Frankfurt against Eintracht and against the poor Manchester United side, there's been a few moments in the Europa League that questions Ange. The difficulty is, if I were in Daniel's situation, I'd be looking at what I could replace him with before I decided to replace him. The challenge of doing that is that doesn't become something that people aren't aware of. So all of a sudden, if you're looking around trying to find somebody to replace somebody with, the media will become aware of it. Then all of a sudden, if you go back to Ange Postecoglou, you've got the same situation that you had with the Man United ridiculous review over Ten Hag. That dragged on and ultimately ended up with the conclusion that Ten Hag got fired 3 months later. It's easy to say, back somebody and then stay with them. But if you back them and 10 games into the season, you're sitting 17th in the league and you're replicating the same form. What are you going to do then? Just stick with it.
But what's next for Ruben Amorim? If extending Ten Hag's contract was Ineos's first mistake, might alighting upon Amorim be their next? Amorim spoke post-match.
This moment is really, I'm not going to be here defending myself. It's not my style. I cannot do it. It's really hard for me. So I have nothing to show to the fans and say, I'm going to improve because of this. I had these problems. I will not do nothing. So in this moment is a little bit of faith. So let's see. And like I said before coming here in the flash, I'm always open. If the board and the fans feel that I'm not the right guy, I will go in the next day without any conversation about compensation. But I will not quit again. I'm really confident on my job. And as you can see, I will not change nothing in the way I do things.
I mean, you can never deny that he's nothing if not honest. If they don't want me, I'll go. And I'll go without compensation. Is he being clever there, Simon? Is he being honest there?
Well, I mean, he won't have a choice if they wanted him to go, so it's not honest about the reality of how brave he may or may not be. That'll be a decision that's taken away from him. I do think he's being clever, because I think he wins the hearts of the United fans by not offering up any excuses, by not suggesting that we know most likely that there are things that could have been done better over the course of his time there. He could have compromised certain principles to get better outcomes, to build a better platform. And people will think it's bold that he hasn't been prepared to compromise. I'm not sure that sometimes in life, I don't think you win things ultimately in the longer game by constantly compromising, but I do think you have to assess the situation, build up your strength, and then deploy the things the way you want them to be deployed when you're in a position to do so. I think by saying to the audience that's listening, I will not offer up any excuses. I will not offer any explanations. You will have to take some faith in me. It gives an illustration of he's not falling into the trap that football fans hate, which is making excuses and blaming it on other people's deeds and inheriting other people's problems. They don't like that. They'll see it as a refreshing outcome. The idea that he won't go with any compensation, fine, okay, you've probably been paid millions to be here in the first place. You're not off to the poorhouse, and you'll go and get another job somewhere else. So whilst I think that's refreshing in its isolation, I do think it's a calculated attempt to be able to calm down the narrative that what currently is going on isn't good enough, irrespective of what he's inherited, irrespective of the challenges that Manchester United have as a football club.
We're not hearing any solutions.
We're not hearing any solutions. We're not seeing any solutions. And if the United fans are prepared to buy into that, then good luck to them.
Yeah.
I do think that he should be judged by what happens in the summer. I do think he should be judged by the way that the season starts next year.
Yeah.
And I've always felt that. But I don't think he should be given a unilateral pass for the garbage that he has put out over the last 7 months on the field.
Okay. I mean, in losing the final last night, everybody knows they have no European football next season. So how do they rebuild a squad on the basis of that? Because the money they hoped for winning last night and it didn't happen will now no longer materialise. Now, this is all the more relevant, is it not, when you hear what Sir Jim Ratcliffe said to Gary Neville recently.
We increased the cost of running the club, which are the operating costs of running the club, so just the people and the fixed costs, if you like. So all the costs, excluding the player costs, we increased the cost by £100 million in the last, 7 years, since 16. And the player salary bill increased by £100 million. So that went from 150 to 250, this went from 170 to 270. And in that period of time, the top line, the revenue, increased by only £100 million.
£270 million deficit.
So you just finish up with a situation which is on tenor. It doesn't work. If every year you spend more money than you earn, ultimately that's the road to ruin. And unfortunately, and it's not until we mentioned it a couple of times today, it's not known, Manchester United would have run out of money at the end of this year. November this year, the club runs out of cash.
And when he said that, everyone's jaws dropped.
Yeah.
Are we still in that situation? Do we believe that? Do you believe that?
Well, I never believed it at the time. And I said it at the time, it was nonsense. What is staggering to me is that when you are a leading figure on a listed security, which Manchester United are, they're listed on the New York Stock Exchange, and you make statements that are likely to be patently untrue or to be slightly misrepresentative, because one of the things that Stefan Borson did yesterday was bring in the statements that Man United themselves had said about their financial position and how much money they had available to them.
Yeah.
And it was a completely different position to the one that Jim Ratcliffe said in that interview. Now, there are certain governance and rules that you have when you're a leading figure in a listed security, and one of them is you cannot misrepresent the position of that security. So I'm staggered that he said that, and I'm staggered that someone hasn't said something about it, and in fact made a complaint to the New York Stock Exchange about it, because when you start misrepresenting positions about stock values or the value of a business, it starts to move markets and manipulates outcomes. And that's why it is inherently a great responsibility. And you see it happening on the stock market, where you have ONS alerts when somebody says something that's inaccurate, they have to correct it and stock prices move. So I'm really surprised that Jim has said something that seems to be completely the polar opposite of what Man United themselves have said in their financial statements about their cash positions.
But he's no fool, so why would he say it?
I've no idea, because I think that people want to create outcomes, want to create a landscape. He was saying it in conjunction with justifying the decisions that were made about the redundancies. You heard Stefan yesterday, who digs deep into these things, that, and both of us hold the same view, that those redundancies were not the reasons why Manchester United were able to not have to be in a position where they hadn't run out of money. Because clearly, if Man United were spending £150 million on transfers in the summer, albeit on probably deferred terms, then they must have known they were going to run out of money in October, November, as Jim was suggesting. But that seems to be completely at odds with the statements that Man United have put out, suggesting their position. So when you've got a leading figure, a major shareholder, talking about a listed security on the New York Stock Exchange, suggesting things that don't seem to be right, I am staggered by it. I was staggered at the time because I thought it was nonsense, claptrap. You've got billionaires sitting behind it. They can make funds available. He talks about the cost implications of the reasons why the revenue is this. Well, we know that 50, 60, 70 million pounds a year is going out in dividends and going out in debt servicing. Repackage that if you want to, then you don't have the cash burn.
Yeah.
So when you look at that, you think to yourself, what is it all about? What is going on inside Manchester United that enables these people to say things that seem to be away from the reality, but also to make decisions like the Ten Hag appointment, to prevaricate around keeping Ten Hag, then to take him back into situation, give him a new contract, expand the liability on the contract, bring Dan Ashworth in, spend all your time trying to get Dan Ashworth, argue with Newcastle about the fact they should be letting him go to a bigger club, then binning him off 5 months later. This is not really best in class stuff. And Jim Ratcliffe, in his own field, is best in class.